taking a critical look at the gaming news of the week. This is Augmented Reality, presented by the Triple S League.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Augmented Reality Podcast. For May 22nd, 2019, this is your source for news, leaks, and insights about games and the gaming industry. As I said, it's May 22nd. This is the Wednesday evening edition of the show. Hello to everybody who is able to tune in live, and those of you who are watching after the fact because it's too dang late for you in Europe. Welcome to you as well. My name is Asheninity. I'm here as always with the Cybsidian.
Hello, hello, hello.
And we've also got a recurring special guest, the Mad Queen of the Mad Queen Show. How are you doing tonight? Actually, it's like
great. It's a little late for me because it's 4 a.m. in here.
I was gonna say, you are in Europe, so it's like 4 a.m. for you. We appreciate your dedication. We appreciate you being here with us and to talk about a topic that I have a feeling you're gonna be pretty passionate about. I know you and Cyb both have been really following this story about working conditions at CD Projekt Red, and we are going to dive deep into this because we have some inside info. Both Mad Queen and Cybsidian have been in communication with some people on the inside about this.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, we should clarify. This is not primarily about the working conditions. This is primarily about the assessment that the current state of the game is basically Anthem 2.0.
Right. Yeah, and we're going to dive into all of that.
That is the biggest thing.
This is all spinning out of an article from Jason Schreier of Kotaku that was published on Friday. Now, we talked about this a little bit on Saturday on our Saturday morning podcast, but there's been more interest in it. There's been more developments, and we've got some more info. And I took a second look at the article, and after looking at it a little more carefully than I did before Saturday's show, I'm pretty disgusted by what I read. The amount of framing in an attempt to smear, I was very disappointed in that. But anyway, we will dive into that in just a minute. But first, if you're listening live this morning, please say hello in the live chat and send us your questions and comments there as well. We'll read and respond to as many as we can throughout the podcast. And don't forget to slam that like button. It likes it rough, and it tells us and YouTube that you appreciate this content. If you're listening after the fact on one of the audio-only platforms, we're glad you're here as well, and we appreciate your likes and follows. It does take us a day or two or a few to get the podcast up to the audio platforms, so if you want to get the latest info sooner, we encourage you to hit the link in the description to subscribe to the Triple S League YouTube channel. Hello, everybody who is listening live, quite a few of you. Katriox says it's 6 a.m. For Bluntman, it's 5 a.m. Darth Raver, 10 p.m. John Be Good, you're not going to show some gameplay of Cyberpunk? No, I mean, all the gameplay that's out right now is available on the official Cyberpunk 2077 YouTube channel, so you can check that out. Michael Ferguson, 9 p.m. Texas. Ben, 12 p.m. good old Australia. We have people tuning in from all over the world. This is fantastic. Hello to you all. Hello to everybody who's been talking in the chat since quite a while. And Yum Lemming Kebabs, it was me we're going back and forth with in the chat. It usually is under the official Triple S League chat on podcast days. Cyb chimes in under his own account name, typically. But you never know. All right. So, Niv Aussie says, I want to sleep, but this podcast, you know what? I love our audience. I love all of you. I mean, thank you so much for supporting this show and being so excited to listen to a few nerds yammer on about games and stuff. It really means a lot to us, and that's why we keep doing it. All right. So
I am not just a nerd. I am also a spy. So, and Mad Queen's a pretty badass actress, too. So,
we all have
we're multifaceted.
You know that I can shoot guns?
I shot a gun once. It was like a pellet thing, but Anyway, all right, so speaking of CDPR, before we dive into the Kotaku story, sorry, not trying to tease you all, but this is a smaller thing that I just wanted to make sure that we it's kind of a good lead into the other CDPR story. So GOG, the CD Projekt Red's game storefront, has just announced GOG Galaxy.
Red is the studio.
I'm sorry?
CD Projekt, not CD Projekt Red. Red is the studio, the developing studio.
Right,
Red,
okay. So
without Red is the company. Sorry for correcting you.
That's okay. It's good to be accurate. So anyway, GOG Galaxy 2.0 has just been announced, and so GOG Galaxy is the Steam-like client for the GOG storefront, and so it's the program you install. It's a game launcher. It has cloud saves. It has various things like that. Anyway, GOG Galaxy 2.0 was just announced, and this is very ambitious. We had a joke on the podcast a while back when we were talking about all the launchers that have come about. You've got a launcher for almost every game company now if you're playing on PC. And we joked someone in the chat was joking that they're going to make a launcher for all the launchers. Well, like a boss, CD Projekt, not CDPR, CD Projekt has come along and has decided to do that through their GOG company. Now, it's not exactly a launcher, but what it is it purports to be, a program where you can basically have all of your games and all of your friends and game stats and, basically all the features of pretty much any launcher, including console platforms, all in one place. And it's going to feature things like cross-platform chats. It's going to have your game stats, your I don't see it specifically here, but I imagine like your, Steam achievements and things like that. All of your games from across different libraries, all in one place. I don't even know how they're going to do this, but that is what they have announced that they're going to do. And so that's pretty exciting. And they want to bring this to basically every platform that exists on PC. Well, it's for PC, but they want to integrate it with PlayStation, Xbox, Steam, all of these different platforms, and have everything all in one place. And so I'm just going to read a brief description here. What is GOG Galaxy 2.0? This is from their website. By the way, the beta is the beta available now, or you can just sign up for it?
No, you can sign up for the beta and access it.
You can register to access the beta. I'm not sure when that goes live. Is it live currently?
Oh, live? No, I believe it's not live.
Not live yet, but you can go to gogalaxy.com and you can sign up for the beta if you want to try it out. But it's an application thanks to which you'll be able to combine multiple libraries into one and connect with your friends across all gaming platforms, consoles included. If your games and gaming buddies are scattered between different launchers and platforms, this is a solution for you. Keeping track of all achievements earned by you and your friends, hours played, and the games owned across platforms has never been this easy. And the application is entirely free. All you need is a GOG account to use it. I should have just read that instead of trying to explain it myself.
It's funny because this concept just slapped so hard in the face of all these companies that are battling for exclusivity that I think I'm feeling the wave from here of the slap. Yes.
Feeling the wave
That's
from
been
the
hard.
slap.
It's like
It's like the Thanos snap. It's the CD Projekt slap. I love it.
Yeah, well, I knew Poles had big hands, but
So
I didn't expect an earthquake from that. But yeah.
now, I don't know how long this has been in development, but do you think this could be a response to the Epic Games Store?
Well,
yeah.
I believe that this is a response. This is a response to the ultimate battle for supremacy, because the Epic Games Store is not new. We had the same conversation some time ago when Bethesda did actually launch their own application for playing their games. I mean, it seems that every day more and more publishers want to have all their own platform and make sure that all players go to the platform. And every day we have more platforms. And at one point, something like what GOG intends to do was needed, I believe.
Yeah, and we kind of saw the writing, in the wind, so to speak, where basically it's like this was going to be a response. They had to come up with a response in order to keep GOG afloat. So they've been hunkered down for a couple months now working on something. And this is what they've been working on. This also plays into what we've heard before, that this is going to be one of the biggest years for CDP CDP and CDPR at E3. This is going to be one of their biggest shows ever, one of the most important shows ever. And this basically boils down to the fact that that they're really, they're not down for the count. They're stepping back into the fight, and they're bringing a special surprise with them. So,
all right.
Yeah, but that's taking the artillery out,
Yeah.
big style.
Okay.
So
not much more to say about that, I don't think, but we'll dive into our other CD Projekt Red news now. So, as I said last Friday, Jason Schreier, who works at Kotaku, published an article that says, the headline is, as Cyberpunk 2077 development intensifies, CD Projekt Red pledges to be, quote, more humane, end quote, to its workers. And now, I mentioned this on Saturday's podcast. Even that is some devious framing right there.
Mm-hmm.
The words more humane implies that they're not being humane.
Yeah,
which
is implied
that
they were beating them with cattle rods, trying to
if you
from
take
Fallout
it, yeah,
2.
yeah, on the worst end of the scale. But the other thing, I feel like this is taken from a quote from, I believe it was Adam Kaczynski, and I don't believe he's a native English speaker. So
yeah,
it's I don't think it was a very fair quote. Let's put it that way. Let me just confirm.
Is there anything in this article that is fair?
Well, no, there isn't. We're gonna get way into that. As you can see, on the thumbnail, I put CDPR is being smeared for clicks right now. That's basically what's happening. People are trying to make news out of something that's not news in order to get those sweet rage clicks. And so we're gonna dive into that. Like I said, Cyb and Mad Queen have been talking to people and have got some juicy info. This could be a spicy one, but I need to correct myself. It was Iwinski, not Kaczynski.
They're both native to the Polish language first and foremost.
Right, and so that the word humane, more humane, like you can't read too much into that because it's. I don't even know if he originally said this in English or if it's been translated, but. In any case, not being a native English speaker, I think that using that word as your primary quote was kind of a low blow, but that's not as low as it gets, and so I'll let you two carry it from here.
Well, I'm going to repeat the anecdote that we were commenting before, because the first time that I read this article, I did it like diagonally. I don't know if this is also said in English. That's when you read something without paying much attention.
Kind of, would say like skimming it, or probably say skimming. Like just kind of, which is kind of what I did. Like you're not reading it really really carefully, but.
And also right now I'm sorry for interrupting you. I'm super busy doing some videos that I'm preparing for E3, so I didn't want to make a video because while I like doing quote unquote stupid news, I know they are not stupid, but like small things about the game. This is the only news that I like doing because everybody knows that I'm quite biased with the subject. So I'd rather not talking about that. And I thought about making a video on in general about crunch. About my professional experience with crunch because I am a pro crunch person, well used, well done, obviously, and well paid. And in the end, I thought, forget it. I won't be doing any video. And then I wrote an email to someone working at Red, where I didn't ask about this article. It was an email just written. Because I wanted to check on him and know if he was doing all right. And he answered, "Oh, yes, I'm doing fine. By the way, regarding the Kotaku article."
So you didn't even ask about it, but they brought it up.
Yes, I didn't ask about it. I only wanted to know if he was doing okay. So yes, I with this I figured that probably this is something important at the studio. So let's dig a little deeper.
All right, and what did you find out?
That the article is bullshit, in a nutshell.
All right.
It's not just bullshit, and this is what I ran into on my end.
Before you go on, let me just say one more thing. There is one particular thing that I didn't like about the article the moment I read it properly, which is noticing that Schreier doesn't believe a single word that Ivinsky and Badowski say. Like, yeah, you're saying that, but yeah, this is just to avoid the controversy because E3 is around the corner,
Yeah, actually, let me
please?
give an example of that. So Ivinsky said that we've been working, we've been communicating clearly to people that, of course, there are certain moments where we need to work harder, but we want to be more humane and treat people with respect. If they need to take time off, they can take time off. Nobody will be frowned upon if this will be requested. So that's the direct quote from Ivinsky regarding their non-obligatory crunch policy. And the very next paragraph starts. And this is Schreier talking now. This is not anybody at CDPR or anything like that. This is Jason Schreier talking directly to you, the reader. Of course, anyone who's worked anywhere knows that a request from the boss doesn't need to be mandatory for it to be something you have to do. When probed, Ivinsky wouldn't promise to limit crunch to certain periods or offer specific numbers other than to say that he hoped making this public statement would help CD Projekt Red employees feel more comfortable telling their managers when they don't want to put in extra time, etc. That is a perfect example of exactly what you were just talking about. The way he's framing the response. Oh, Ivinsky, he was being evasive. He wouldn't promise to limit crunch. He just said, oh, well, we're making this public statement so that employees feel more comfortable. And then he points out, oh, something doesn't need to be mandatory for it to be, in a sense, mandatory because your boss asked you to do it. So he's completely undermining what Ivinsky says right there. This is not.
It's funny because you are not going to commit to making crunch on specific occasions. So why are you doing crunch? Yes, Mr. Schreier, please allow me to show you my complete, very secret schedule for Cyberpunk 2077. Here you go.
And how are you supposed to predict that anyway? I mean, is the only way to have an acceptable crunch policy is to say we're only going to do it for this number of weeks or these weeks out of the year or exactly 5 weeks before game release and not a day more? Like, how on earth are you supposed to do that? That's not how the game industry works. That's just not possible.
It's not only game industry. In whatever creative thing you work, there are a lot of things you cannot predict. You can predict that you're going to do something and then it doesn't work as you expected. Then on the way you had better ideas. Then something doesn't work. Then, 1,000 things can happen. 1,000. It is true that there are certain times of the year where you're going to crunch when you are on gaming because hello, E3, Gamescom, this kind of stuff. But even if there was a prediction from the studio, this prediction would explain the milestones of Cyberpunk, which is something that they are keeping secret. They're not going to share with Kotaku.
Right. But I think, and there are more than just that example of him taking a quote and then undermining it and turning it into something else and trying to shade doubt on it. But then
and the worst is what we haven't even touched on the worst thing that he's done in this article.
And I'm just about to read that actually. Here I'll just actually I'll let you take it. I'll read the quote if you want, but
read the quote.
Okay, so he interviewed some former employees from CD Projekt Red.
How many?
And what does it even say here?
It says 4. I'm trying to build.
Right. Okay. And we'll get into a little more about who those might be in a minute. But one of the things that came out of this was that people are drawing comparisons now between the development of Cyberpunk 2077 and Anthem, which we know had a very rocky development cycle, and which Jason Schreier did a pretty good expose on, one of his better recent works. But this former CD Projekt Red developer said, "I've felt that there are hundreds of parallels that could be drawn between the story of the rocky development of Anthem and the story of the rocky and even more rocky to become development of Cyberpunk 2077. This said by a former CD Projekt Red employee, anonymously. We don't know who they are, or even if they've worked on Cyberpunk 2077.
Mm-hmm.
We have some hints, but that's some external stuff that Cy will get into. This is used as a feature quote in the article.
Mega feature.
It's one of those quotes they've bolded.
One of the biggest ones.
Yeah, they
right at the front, loading into the article. This question, as far as we can tell, and as far as we have been able to confirm with one or two higher up people in the company, was not directed at either of the CDPR people. It hasn't been a hard no. This was not asked. This has been, they're not talking about this article from their perspective, but from what certain team members have been able to gather, is this question was not asked at all. Period.
Yeah. So
this wasn't brought up. This was not engaged with the interviewees and the interviewer. This was something that was added to the article afterwards. So if I could be so candor, I'm going to set an example for everybody out there. Imagine you're interviewed by somebody on the street for something that you've done recently, or some scene that you happen to walk past. And the interviewer asks you a couple generalized questions, and then you go on your way. And then you go, hey, I'm going to be on the news tonight. So you tune in onto the news, and you see yourself being interviewed by this person, and then you see yourself walking away in the video, and then the reporter turns to the camera and says to the camera, and as you can see, they had absolutely no response to the allegation that they indeed murdered a rhino. We don't know how many rhinos they've killed, but we can assume that it's probably quite terrible. And as you can see, they absolutely did not address this whatsoever. And you're going, what the hell?
Well, that's even pretty generous, because typically what they would do is
very generous.
Typically what they would do is edit it together to make it look like you're avoiding the question, but exactly. So
yeah, it's funny, no? So you have a couple of people who called you because they wanted to talk to you. They wanted you to ask them the most uncomfortable questions, because Jason Schreier is the person that right now is making the uncomfortable questions, and they went up front, showing their faces. Here we are, and you don't ask them the bigger question.
The one you're going to lead the article with, yeah.
Yes, yeah, that's impressive journalistic work, yeah.
Yeah, incredibly impressive. So let me just dig down into this a little bit further, because this is what really set me off. Now, it set me off a little bit on the Saturday, and then the Sunday kind of rolled around, and I started to look into it, and I had a couple people reach out, and I started to reach out, and things kind of came together more or less today, early this morning and later today. Just kind of things like coming through, people coming back with information, certain data catches being available to me. And here's what I've learned. That Jason, as I said, from everything that we've been able to kind of figure out, he did not even ask this question. So he's asking a question, he's putting a question, he's posing a question, he's posing not a question, a statement that there are reports that the development of this game is exactly like Anthem. We're not going to get a good game. This is a sham, because Anthem was a sham. The first trailer that we saw for that stupid game was one that was the pitch video that they used to form the development around. The game didn't exist, period. Now, we know that CDPR's Cyberpunk 2077 exists. In fact, we know quite well that it exists in a playable state. Not just from what CDPR has said, but through other sources. Through other sources that the Mad Queen and ourselves have confirmed on more than one occasion. That being, and I have to be very careful that we don't put anything out there, but we know that certain high-level people in other companies have had a chance to see this in depth. And when we say in depth, we mean actually in depth. And so this statement on its first head is a complete lie. That if Mr. Schreier had an ounce of actual journalistic integrity when it came to this particular interview, he should have checked out and he should have confirmed. And with his connections, I'm sure he would have been able to confirm that the game is in fact in a playable state and was when it was first announced. Not first announced, but when it was announced again at the last E3. That it was not shovelware, that it was not vaporware, that it in fact existed as a largely fleshed out, as we've said before on this podcast many times before, it exists in the state of what most companies now refer to as a ready product. And what in their eyes, it's a pre-alpha. To them, this was pre-alpha. To many other companies, if EA had their hands on this game as it was last year, they would have shipped that thing 6 months before. Because it was clearly ready.
Yeah, right. But it was playable, and when the Anthem announced trailer came out, the game did not exist. The trailer was, as Saib said, a sham.
Now, the game existed in the sense that there were lots of like pieces of it, but nothing was put together.
Yeah, but it wasn't like a gameplay. Basically, the trailer was mocked up from things that basically didn't exist in the game yet, and then they went and made the game.
Yeah, and it was talked about in that particular scenario how the game had been designed, and had been tried several times, and one of the reasons why I couldn't really talk about it at the time is because I had played one of those earlier versions of the game, and it was pretty darn good. There was no flight. It was a ground combat thing, and it was pretty decent. For a really like kind of like an earlier kind of vertical slice-ish kind of thing. It was it was fairly substantial, and it had good legs. That was the version that EA came in, reviewed, and said, no, don't make this. Go back to the drawing board. And then it was about a year later that the pile of garbage that we saw on the trailer was shown to us and said, hey, here it is. This is it. And it completely fell apart. And there were so many people who were like, no, this is going to be the best game ever from BioWare. Anyway, so getting back to...
Can I interrupt you to answer
please.
a question that before I lose it? Because Kraken made a question that I mean, it's quite logical, like super basic. Why not just talk to current employees on the state of treatment from the company? Well, I'm going to put you a situation, like Saib did before about the journalist. So imagine this scene. A game developer picks up the phone and calls to Kotaku. Hello, is this Jason Schreier? I have news for you. I am happy with my work. This doesn't happen. You need to go to find them. Only the mad ones come to you to tell you the news. What's the thing? If you only talk to one in a studio with more than 500 people, that's to start with, the one who's going to pick up the phone and call to a journalist is the one who is pissed for whatever the reason.
Right.
The one who is happy is not going to do it. So if you want to talk to the one who is happy, you need to go look for him.
Exactly. And this brings us back well over a year ago now, when you actually did that, Mad Queen. You
almost 2 years, I think.
It was a long time ago now,
it
but
was over 2 years.
There was another set of allegations about working conditions at CD Projekt Red. And
this is very important because we're going to tie this into what's going on currently.
So
please continue.
Basically, Mad Queen, with some help from us, but Mad Queen did the brunt of the work, and so massive props there. You interviewed over 40 current employees.
I think they were.
I'm sorry?
43 they were.
Right. And why don't you give us a brief rundown of what you discovered? I know it's been a while, but give us the highlights.
Well, the highlights is that the opinion was quite split about what too much crunch is too much crunch. Some were absolutely happy to what happened at the end of The Witcher, like, well, yeah, we worked like hell, but if I wanted to drive a tricycle, I would have applied to kindergarten instead. And some other devs were absolutely horrified, left the company running. Some fell into depression and anxiety. They needed treatment for anxiety. Even though there were some who didn't mind to work that hard, more or less all of them agreed that the game was not under control. That they were what's the word? I'm sorry. Ambitious. They were way too ambitious.
It was identified, if I recall, that there were some middle management issues.
Yes, I was going to get there.
Yeah, but
The game was too ambitious, and the situation escaped the control of the studio. And in this escape of control, it was something that happened. It's a battle between the middle management that inside the studio they call it, excuse me, they call it the Game of Thrones. That basically is trying to get Adam's attention. For what I understood, basically is battles amongst the middle management to escalate inside the company. What's the thing? That they all tried to impress Adam, and by doing so, as the project wasn't under control, they were giving orders to the developers without the approval of the people over them, and two different managers could give contradictory orders to the same developer. So they were going crazy. They were doing a lot of crunch that was stupid and unnecessary because they needed to implement the thing that was requested, then remove it because it wasn't well studied. And yes, in general, they had a problem with middle management, but it's true that the game escaped their control basically because it was way too ambitious, and also because they had the idea of producing at the same time Cyberpunk and The Witcher 3. At some point, they had to move all the people that they hired for Cyberpunk 2077 to The Witcher 3 to finish the game because it was super delayed. It was delayed publicly, but internally it was even more delayed because they had an internal schedule that was way before.
right.
So at one point they finished The Witcher 3, finished the expansions, and then returned to Cyberpunk. And then it seems that the middle management of Cyberpunk and the middle management of The Witcher 3 clashed for the love of Adam Badowski. And
All
it
right.
was a mess again. So at some point, the company realized that was a problem, and they implemented some new things to make sure that they improved the the production and the planification of the game. And they hired a new producer that is very experienced and also has a fame of getting shit done. And they also started to make developers to write down everything that they were doing to track all their work. Nobody told me this directly, but it looked like some way excuse me, some way to check if someone was making developers lose their time.
Right. All right.
And some measures were taken 2 years ago already.
All right. So, as you can see, and I mean, if this illustrates anything, it's not that we are shilling for CDPR, or it's that we are not shilling for CDPR. They have had some issues, and they're not a perfect company. Of course, you'll never find a perfect company. But as you said, you've talked to some people who have said that this current article comparing Cyberpunk's development to Anthem is nonsense. So, what do you have on how things are currently at the company?
I need to say one thing before that.
Okay.
Hello, Strayer, you have a call. It's 2016. They have this news. A time machine. I think he got a time machine and he forgot in what year was he stepping out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because this news belongs to 2016. That is when the game was, a little messy. Cyberpunk was a little messy when they started, but currently they are more or less on schedule. The crunch is not as hard as one may think, being E3 around the corner. The measures that Ivinsky promised that they were going to implement are slowly being implemented, really implemented in the studio in a way that before, in the times of The Witcher, one of the major problems when it came to crunch is that even when it was non-mandatory, you had always the pressure, and people. It seems that people left the studio, to go home, always feeling guilty, and they are trying to change the way of communicating things about the crunch for developers to understand that it's really non-mandatory, and to understand that it's not that it's punished if you don't do the crunch, but it's that it's rewarded if you do the crunch, which is different.
Okay, that's really interesting. But yeah, you have in this article you have Schreier quoting Avinsky and Kaczynski about this kind of a thing, but then he immediately turns around and starts to cast shade on that and tries to undermine it, which is not as farthest thing from objective journalism. So that's really disappointing. But anyway, did you have any more to say on how things are going at the studio currently? Like anything else you found out?
Well, what did I explain? Sorry, I made an intermission to answer to HTK Gaming because he just did a very generous donation, so I wanted to thank him.
Oh yeah, well, thank you. Yes, thank you so much, HTK Gaming. He says, to my favorite people, love all the work you five, last known meal included, do. And so he's talking to us and Mad Queen and the Neon Arcade, who's also in chat there, I believe. So thanks for all you do. Couldn't ask for a better group of people to represent us. We really appreciate you. We thank you. Like always, much love and keeping you. Thank you so much, HTK Gaming. We really appreciate that. Yeah, that means a lot, and we are so glad you appreciate this content. And for those of you who are Cyberpunk fans, especially if you're new to our channel, we do a collaborative podcast with the Mad Queen Show, the Neon Arcade, and Last Known Meal. Every Sunday, it goes live on one of our 4 channels. It rotates around, but you can find the full playlist, I believe, on any of the 4 channels. You can definitely find it on ours, and all the episodes there. But every Sunday, there's the Cyberpunk 2077 Community Podcast with those 4 channels, so definitely check it out. All right, so yeah, you were explaining how they...
I was explaining.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
ahead.
I lost the thread to answer to him. I'm so sorry. So the thing is that, as I was saying, the crunch is not as hot as one might expect for being A3. It obviously depends on the department. I'm sure that PR is suffering because it's A3. This is something that you don't even need to ask. But yes, it depends on the department. And there's people that's doing very little overtime, and being E3 around the corner, I repeat, and this is very important to note. And also, what several devs are telling me is that yes, there's still room for improvement. A lot of things that the company needs to do to be as close as possible to perfect, but everybody's noticing a great improvement from the times of The Witcher 3. That were very, very bad, and I understand that improving from that, it's a quote-unquote easy. But you also need to have the will to do it. And yes, the morale at the studio is way better than back in the day. And they are just working on a game that is more or less on schedule. They have been on schedule for more than 2 years now, I believe, for one and long. And this information, comparing it with Anthem, is really, really old information.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? That's a great transition to what we're going to talk about.
No, we're not done yet. So
yeah, okay.
I have not even come close to I've okay. So we're not done with this. How Jason screwed this up royally yet, because we haven't even touched on the info that I've gotten. So, basically, we have Jason putting out this thing saying, hey, this is basically like Anthem. And he's got 4 sources. He says he's got 4 sources. So we started doing some snooping, and you can do some of this snooping with just bloody logic. So let's start with the logical thing. He says that these are former developers. So former developers, how many former developers have been working on Cyberpunk 2077 in the last 3 years and have left after the major transition from The Witcher over to full-time production on Cyberpunk? And the answer to that is a very small number.
Excuse me, Saib,
Yes,
let me
go
cut
ahead.
just a little detail in here. Taken for granted that Riot actually checked that they worked on Cyberpunk.
Right.
Which we don't even know, which I'm going to
Which
get
we
to.
don't even know.
Which I'm going to get to because we have strong evidence that 3 of the sources have not, maybe even all 4 of them, have not worked on Cyberpunk 2077. They left back in 2015, which is 4 bloody years ago.
Let me correct you in there, because if one is the person we discussed, yes, they were at the beginning of Cyberpunk.
Yes, at the very beginning.
At the very beginning.
Yeah, let me clarify. So between about 3, because I don't want to pinpoint them too well, between 3 and 5 years ago, basically, these are what we believe that at least 3 of these sources are, and one of these sources has said recently to one of my wonderful little birds, you know who you are, that that he sorry that they were going to cause damage to CDPR as kind of a revenge thing, and that they were capable of doing this because they could bring down their stock profile and create a very negative story right before it happened, and that they were speaking with somebody who could make that happen and who was eager for the information. So this is basically what we have boiling up here. And I want to quickly thank Chosen Squirrel for the $20. Thank you so much. That is very helpful. Gaming journalism has been a cancer since 2014. You're absolutely right. They lie, they smear, and they love creating fake outrage. Absolutely. If the game is good, I expect game journalists to be screaming. Yes, and this is what, and this leads into my next point, which is why I wanted to read it. Again, thank you, Squirrel. Because
before you go on, let me interrupt you with something, because it just made me remember a situation that we had when we did these interviews to former and current Red developers. And these interviews were sent to different media, obviously with the appropriate proof that they were a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the media, well, I'm not sure if I should mention the name, said that they didn't want to go on with it because good news don't sell. It wasn't
Yes.
negative enough.
Yes, we had reached out to several people with a lot of this news initially when Cyberpunk was accused of being, basically a beating house or whatever nightmarish situation you want to refer to it as. And we were told that, sorry, nice news doesn't sell. If we run this, we're going to have an article where everybody's going to go, oh, that's nice, and then move on. We're not going to have a group of people or people subscribe because it's not bad news enough. In fact, we're not even going to bother checking this because right now, the fact that there is a negative story out there, whether it's not true or what, is actually more interesting to us to get into whether or not it's true. Was basically the reply we got back from this certain group of people, and we stopped talking to them after that point because apparently bad news sells, good news doesn't sell. But let me just get into a little bit more because I'm going to get into a rant here. So prepare yourself. The 4 sources that he spoke of. First of all, he's saying 4 sources, and the way that he's wording it makes it sound as if they are, people that are in the trenches, that are working on the game right now. But as we've discussed multiple times, that the number of people that have left the project are actually quite small.
Just a small thing. I don't know if it was a mistake. The article says that they are former developers.
Yes, but he's worded it in such a way that it can come across as they have been working on the Cyberpunk up until recently.
I just wanted to make it clear for the people on the audience because it sounded like you said they were current.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that Schreier braced the way that he spoke about them
No, no,
one
I
might,
was correcting you because it was understood that you, not Schreier, you were saying that they are current. Just wanted to make
yes,
super clear. No,
I'm
they are
getting to
not
that
clear.
point. I'm getting to that point.
Now go on. Yes, just in
Yes,
case
thank you.
it wasn't clear for the audience.
Okay,
Please go
so
on.
again, he phrased it in such a way that leads you into thinking that these people have or recently have been working on the project. We know of two very key people that have left recently. One which has been seen speaking with Schreier in the recent past couple of months. And if you're in the know of this kind of stuff, then you keep track of that kind of information. And when he says this, you assume that what he's saying is true, that these people were working on the project up until recently, meaning that maybe it's one of these two people that were quite high up in the program that are now moving on to these other really big projects. Maybe it's one of them, because in this case, in this scenario, that's the only way the story has credibility. And because he knows that it's not one of those people, which we're very certain on, that is not one of those people at all, means that it's one of these other people that have left that were basically small fry, or that basically didn't have any access to core or important information at all. And what we've discovered is that the way that he's been phrasing this stuff and the way that he set this up, he's basically let us believe that there's this big panic in the studio, when it turns out that three of these people, at the very least, we can positively identify at least two of them. And we probably know who the third is, and I think we know who the fourth is. And these are people who have attacked that have attacked CDPR multiple times before. Viciously, and also through anonymous reports, through Glassdoor reviews, which you don't need to identify yourself, and you can write from as many anonymous sources as you want. These people have also communicated and talked with various YouTubers and various other media journalists, and have tried to spin a very negative story again and again and again. And we know that at least one of them is involved, for sure, because they sent some information saying, wait till you see this article, before the article came out. Sent it to somebody in the know who happens to be on the receiving end of this kind of stuff, still at the company. So somebody said, hey, you got to check this article, it's going to be really good, and it's not going to be the good that you think of because the bosses are involved. No, this is going to hurt them. This is going to be another revenge best served cold story from me to them. And so this is how we know who for sure one of these people are, who's come out and said this. Now, why am I not name dropping this person? And the main reason is that while we're very certain, we're not 100% certain, and this person ultimately just wants more publicity anyways. They want more people to be talking about them. They want more of the notoriety of this kind of thing. And while they don't want to step out into the limelight themselves, because then they'll be called out for what they are, which is a whiny little bee, but for some odd reason, they're continuing to hammer this. Now, Jason should have looked into this a little bit.
Before you go on, well, these are the reasons of Scythe to not name this person. Mine are that he doesn't let me.
Yes. I'm not letting Mad Queen drop this because it's kind of like, it's a little bit like doxing, and I don't want these people to have this attention. I don't want these people to they're not brave enough to stand out on their own. I'm not going to push them into the spotlight. They want to stay in the shadow and sneer like little goblins. They can do that if they want. They can do that all day long. Because ultimately this is going to be disproved, generally speaking, by the good work ethic and the superior moral quality that Cyberpunk and the folks over at CDPR have. That they've been putting together a game that's good, that's made for the gamers, that isn't going to have microtransactions, that's balking in the face of everything that Activision and EA tell us to. And for some odd reason, Jason is barking at this company and at the people that still work there, and he's cozying up with some of these other companies. It's interesting that he's, out of all the smear jobs recently, hasn't really done one against Activision. It's very interesting, and I would be very interested to know exactly how much Activision has been sending his way in the form of favors and whatnot. Now, continuing on with our little piece of information and evidence and to tear down
let me cut
Jason
you.
Schreier.
Let me cut you here just to make a question because it came to my mind right now. I didn't think of it because we know that there was this thing that happened some years ago about someone trying to blackmail the Project Red.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we know that this little blackmail job was partially done from the inside. And if you're
Yes.
really, really good on dates and information, you'll be able to tie a certain firing from the company to a certain employee. Yeah, I'm not.
Let's
I'm
not
not
get too far out.
I'm not
down
putting
that
that.
rabbit
I'm not
trail,
putting
but-
that far out. Yes, I'm not going to put that out too much. But it's just, and I don't have the evidence because I wasn't involved in that. But it is an interesting side note, which is, I don't want to. I don't want to get in. I don't want to do what I'm going to now accuse Jason Schreier of doing. So Jason, basically, he got these 4 people. And it's very convenient that he's had 4 people email him very recently about a particular subject. In fact, it's very interesting that exactly 4 people have emailed him all within a very short span of time, right before he was about to interview the big bosses at the company, and right before he was about to publish this article. One might ask, if one is an investigative journalist, and you suddenly receive 4 envelopes in the mail, and all 4 envelopes come from different people with some, basic ID and some other stuff that you can check to confirm that they are who they say they are. But the fact that they all dropped off a letter, little brown envelope saying, "Oh, hey, you wouldn't believe who I saw, shipping weapons and supplies to the enemy." Now, if the 3 of us got together and I said, "Hey, let's all call the same radio station and tell them the same juicy story on the same day," that's called, setting up a story. That's corrupting a source. That's taking information and worming it in such a way that the reader or the receiver of that information is poisoned by certain information. But they're only really poisoned by that information if they're idiot enough to not double check anything. And the more you get convincing or dreadful information all at the same time, conveniently close to each other, and if you're not investigating a crime scene, if you're getting things in the mail randomly, or if you're getting people that come up and tell you the same thing all at the same time, there's 2 things that this means. A, that this could be true, and B, there's somebody planning something. And when you're doing an investigator's job, it's your job to check into this kind of stuff. Jason, we know, didn't check into these 4 individuals past pretty much basically just reading their email. He didn't reach out to confirm their story. He didn't reach out to talk to other people. He didn't run the story past the bosses that he had the ability to interview and that he was interviewing at the time. Instead, he just forgot about all of this, moved past it, and basically said, "Oh yeah, this is fine. I totally believe this. I think that this is going to sell more copies if I run with this little tidbit." When it turns out that they were lying greatly, and Jason knows that they were lying in the sense that he's a journalist who could have found out that truth and information, as well as having actually having enough context that he's able to actually put just Sherlock Holmes basic logic together.
All right, I'm going to press you on that just to be
Sure.
fair to Jason Schreier and just to play devil's advocate here. So you say he knows that they were lying. How does he know that? Does he know that they were lying, or did he just not take the steps that he needed to verify?
If he's a game journalist who's been in the industry as long as he has, and if he was at E3 last year, which he probably should have been, and if he had a chance to see the game, which I would assume that he would have had, but I'm not going to confirm that that's the case, then he would know that there are certain people within certain big companies, big consoles, excuse me, that had the access and information to see the game in a working state before that event. That, again, we're a small-time channel that's connected very loosely with a great number of people across the entire industry. And yet, we can get and confirm this information with just a few quick phone calls a couple of emails, and some talking to some people in a professional capacity. Jason Schreier wants to know whether or not certain individuals of these certain companies were able to see this information ahead of the last E3 and confirm that the game is actually in a working order, or even after the case. I'm pretty sure he could have been able to do that. Would he be obligated to if he's running this particular story? And the answer to that is yes. If you have somebody who's being accused of murder, and you jump on the case and say, hey, there's been a murder, this person has committed murder, but then the cops inform you that the so-called victim of the murder is indeed quite still alive and was in fact not attacked at all, you're a bad journalist.
If you don't,
you're not just a bad journalist, you're a corrupt journalist because you took the word of some rando who contacted you, who maybe has it out for the party that he's accusing of murder, before you even confirmed to see whether or not the person who was supposedly the victim was actually dead or not.
And he's also in a position
your
where
metaphors are great today.
And
he's also in a position,
where,
like you said, he's in a position where he can call up the top brass at CD Projekt Red and get a statement.
He had them on the phone.
He did. Now, do we know, was he talking to them before or after he got this other information from the anonymous sources?
We assume that he's had this information beforehand because he slips in this tiny little thing. And again, if you're in the information business, I don't expect the average Joe to know this. And once again, Arclich Steve, thank you so much for the $5. Thank you. I'm going to read his thing here. Can we just get Fkin info on games, not clickbait? It's like, holy hell, doing your job right is ridiculous nowadays. How about growing up, you fake journalists? Yes, 100%. And this is what's going on, because and I'm going to read to you. I was speaking with another journalist, and again, you know who you are. A very good journalist who does a very good job, and I believe you're listening, and I want to thank you because talking with you generally give me good, like, we don't talk a lot, but when we do talk, you're very encouraging just in the general way that you approach information and stories. And I'm going to read a little bit from this one person today too when I'm done with the rant. So, but basically, Jason had the opportunity to check into this, but I believe he had this information beforehand because of the way that he words it, perhaps to preempt a story. That's one of his first lines. Perhaps they contacted me because of my great work that I did recently on the Anthem story. Bringing that straight in, that he says directly. So the guy's patting himself on the back while he's setting up CDPR for basically a smear job to get extra clicks. And this is what pushed me past being mildly annoyed at Jason to calling him out as a bad journalist and a liar. Because he had the information. Did he accuse them directly of the lie? No, the accusation came from four random nobodies who, if he had done his research on at least 3 of them, would have found that they left the company ages ago. In fact, so long ago that we can pretty much identify them having left before the major overhaul of the engine and the game. So again, you're not a journalist if you can't put basic things together. And it's just, oof. It's like a bitter taste. So,
well, I'm really wondering what are his motivations to do that, because, I mean, this is not a very hard thing to do. It was past year. We already knew that the game was playable from start to finish.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, playable in a very rudimentary state, but it was playable. This is something that I'm sure that he could have checked by himself. I'm sure that CD Projekt would have allowed him. He has the contacts to talk this other we are not going to say that had the game before E3.
Mm-hmm.
He had a lot of ways of. I'm sure he has a LinkedIn account to talk to other developers at Red and ask them if it's true he has been sold by former developers. There were a lot of ways to contrast this information that were easy and accessible for him. I mean, we're
Yes.
not talking about a 100 people channel on YouTube. We're talking about Kotaku, so he can pick up the phone and make questions. My question is, why didn't he do them?
Yes. Now, another quick little thing. Again, I'm gonna quote this. So, this wonderful journalist, and again, I didn't ask you whether or not I could say this on air, so I'm not going to identify you. However, if you're okay with that, then I'm definitely going to give you a positive readout someday here. So, anyways, she sent me this little thing. When things are going slow and you're desperate for clicks, and BroTech in the chat brought this up perfectly. Jason needed a story, and he needed a big one, so he created a negative narrative to go along with the story that was kind of a positive, fairly upbeat story. So Jason, 100%, has needed something to keep the momentum going on his webpage and his company, because things have not been going great. They're underneath a massive magnifying glass, and one of the previous companies that was also bought out along with their company that he works at was told, "Oh yeah, we're not going to cut jobs," and then they slashed like 30% of them. Just kick them out the door to the curb. Now, again, so going back to my wonderful contact here. So she says, when things are going slow and you're desperate for clicks, you can make a top 10 list. You can do something relevant. You can flex creativity and create a long form opinion articles on random things. It doesn't mean going with bad info like it's true. They don't even mark rumor items half of the time. And she's absolutely right here. And thank you again. You know who you are. That Jason didn't look at the situation as a way of creating a nice story from a developer who's been, fair and even with their fans and has been doing their absolute best to make sure that a great piece of content is put out. No. Jason looked at the situation, realized that his creative juices were running a little bit dry, or maybe he was just a little bit too full of himself from the last couple of big major stories that have kind of hit the news, and so therefore he decided that he was going to spin this in a way to get people to click. And has it ever worked? Because this morning and yesterday, looking at just the news feed of all these stupid, ridiculous parrot sites, they're like a crow or I don't know if you guys have them, magpie sites. It's these birds that mimic what they hear, and they hear you get mad, and they're more likely to repeat something from you when you're angry than when not. And so they just kind of sit back and they just scream back at what you were yelling. I've had people swear at them, and then the birds perfectly mimic their voice and swear right back at the person. It's really quite hilarious. But anyways, this is basically what happened. This is basically what Jason did. Is he instead of going for something creative and interesting, instead of confirming our faith in a company and encouraging their positive steps, he built in a smear, a little suicide pill into the story so that it would hurt them just as much. And their stocks took a little bit of a hit, but it's the fact that he would do that for some clicks. And it's selling the truth at a cheap rate without doing an ounce of investigative anything to confirm anything. And that's the biggest thing, and that's my biggest pet peeve. It's not the working conditions, because that had been ruled out years ago. It's what he did to throw into that, to cast shade, to cast mud on a good company, on good people working very hard, being very open and honest, because he was full of himself. He knew that he's written several of these reports lately and that they were really good, and by golly, if CDPR doesn't answer my questions, there might be another piece coming their way. And that's how he set it up. And we know that this isn't true because we've had multiple big people see this game firsthand, close up, gotten a good look at it, and they all said a couple of things. They mostly said it was great. A lot of people said, there's some problems here or there that need to be fixed. And what did CDPR do? They hired more people for those roles to ensure that the game was going to be even better. And this is a game, sure, this is for fun, this is what we do to enjoy ourselves, but in this honest-to-God moment, could it kill Jason to be a little bit more honest and not set somebody up with a smear because it could get him a little bit more clicks? Maybe if he had just gone for something a little bit more longer form and a little bit more of a back and forth, talking about issues that he's actually on the other side of a lot, such as monetization. He's a big fan of monetization because people tell him to be. Because big corporations encourage him to and give him the connections and give him the resources that he needs, as long as he keeps plugging away at that, great microtransaction hill that they're trying to set up. It's disgusting. And I mean, I get ranty, I get pissed off sometimes, but this really set me off because this is at the core. This is the core problem with the industry. This is the core problem with the journalists. That they're more interested in getting their clicks, they're more interested in that than they are interested in truth. We had an interesting little conversation on the Discord. Please join the Discord. The other day where we were talking about particular wings of governments and of medicine. It takes a strong, brave man to step forward with a solution that ends his job.
Or woman.
Or woman. Or anybody. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It takes somebody with enormous guts to step forward and say, you know what? I could milk this, but we actually have a cure for it. So I'm just going to put this here. Everybody help themselves. I'm going to go fishing. Right. And there's not a lot of people who have the wherewithal to do that.
You are going away from the subject.
Jason has shown himself to not be one of those people.
Right.
So anyways, rant officially over.
Sure it is. All right.
Is it my turn now?
If you want to add anything.
Yeah, absolutely, Mad Queen. I just want to read this second super chat of the night from Archlich Steve. Thank you so much. Journalists lying. Must be a day ending in Y. Yes. All right, go ahead, Mad Queen. Take it away.
Well, I'm up. I won't say that I'm totally shocked because Saib is totally he's on point on here because I still have fresh in my mind this conversation going on when the last Assassin's Creed was out, and was all this conversation around microtransactions and how Ubisoft created a problem inside a game so they could sell you the solution, and how positive about microtransactions Riot is. And this is something that yes, I totally agree with Saib. And even though I can understand, quote unquote, I won't put at the same level being not being too critical of microtransactions that directly hurting a company for clicks. That are two very different things. I mean, being positive about something that you really don't are, unless he started to suddenly talk about how good it is to have microtransactions in games targeted for kids, because that for me is like the super limit. But I believe that they are in different levels. And I always make the same joke. The same joke about Jason Schreier is that you are not reading an article. All the pieces that he writes are about himself. He's always talking about himself, and on the way he explains a story about the gaming industry. And it's funny because in this case we could exactly see the same. It's just that his story wasn't about him, but about what he was about to do. And I believe that, I mean, that there should be some way to call him out in a way that he needs to correct himself, because it's unbelievable a journalist that big can do that. And actually, I believe that he also took advantage of the fact that we are so close to E3 and people is so eager for information about Cyberpunk 2077, good or bad, especially if it is bad, because as we said before, good news don't sell. And this is going to expand to the whole internet, just because he doesn't want to do his job.
Well, I believe true, that. Yeah, I mean, Cyberpunk's going to be a big topic leading up to E3.
Yes, but what really would piss me like this big style is that if the conversation went on until E3, and then at E3 all the attention was shifted from Cyberpunk to this conversation. I mean, the moment that the Microsoft conference is on Twitch, I don't want to hear anyone discussing this. And if there's anyone discussing this instead of enjoying of whatever CD Projekt Red has to offer, I'm going to strangle Jason Schreier with my own hands. And this is metaphorical before anyone says that this is proof of my future murder. But yes, I mean, the consequences are plenty, and I hope that something big enough happens for people to forget about this, or something big enough happens for someone to prove that Schreier is wrong. Because if the conversation is derailed from a big moment, this is going to be bad. This is going to be really bad because it's the moment of the year for them to show off. And I don't want something like a past Gamescom to happen where people were discussing a different subject instead of discussing the game. And also, Schreier, who is doing lots and lots of articles about what's going on in the gaming industry and how the working conditions are, because he's so worried about developers. Who the fuck does he think is building Cyberpunk? Do you really believe that explaining lies about the company is not hurting the people working there? How much do you care about developers now? End of rant.
The other thing that I would like to add to this is that I know exactly what Jason's going to do if the game turns out to be amazing. You know what he's going to do? He's going to say, well, it was a good thing that I encouraged them to make sure that they progressed on it, because if I wasn't here, well, let me just tell you how bad it would be. And it's that somebody who's just so full of themselves. It's like, I managed to turn the game around because
every single fucking article this man writes, every single, you have, if I had a cent every time he talks about himself when he's talking about the game, now I would be rich. Now I would be able to buy Activision.
Yeah,
that would be a
He's
horrible
always
investment.
talking about yes, Phil,
that would be a terrible investment.
I just wanted to name something very expensive.
Well, this has been quite a topic. It's been quite spicy, but you know what? We got through it, and I think this has been very informative. We hope that that this has helped a lot of you out there understand this, and we encourage you to share it around. And also, if we love seeing everybody very active in the live chat. It's been great conversation today. If you want to keep the conversation going after the live broadcast, we welcome you to join our Discord community. As Saib mentioned earlier, you can find the link to that in the description below. It's a place where you can chat with us and other Triple S fans about all the things we love to talk about and stay up to date about everything we're doing here at the Triple S League. And it's a very positive community. This past couple of weeks, there's been some what you might call traditionally spicy topics have come up, and yet it has stayed very respectful, and I haven't had to ban anybody, let's put it that way, and we want to keep it that way. So, and I appreciate everybody who's there, who's remaining respectful of one another, even when you disagree passionately about things. And so, I've been very happy about that. So yeah, join the community. It's a great place, lots of fun. You can post about anything in gaming or nerd fandom that you find interesting, and you can talk directly to Saib and myself. Mad Queen hangs out there sometimes too. Of course, she's got her own community to stay on top of.
I won't be able to hang out anywhere until past E3.
Right. Well, she's got her own work and her own community to stay on top of, but we encourage you to. We've really been trying to build a community to merge, all of kind of what I would call the sort of positive cyberpunk communities. Like we had for a while, the community on Reddit was a very toxic place, and now we've got
very toxic. Toxic is an understatement, man.
Yeah,
I love people from Reddit. It's not everybody. It's just the way that it's set up is just so. It rewards. More often than not, it rewards bashing and negativity versus interesting introspection and assessment of facts. It's like I've laid out factual, just a straight up factual statement about some random topic, and the reaction's been, I hope you get cancer. And I'm the one who gets banned. It's like,
yeah.
Eeh.
I think it was, we had someone in one of our earlier live podcasts, someone told us that, they appreciated our content. They were no longer, they were leaving the Reddit community, and they were sort of sticking with us and the Mad Queen as where they came to talk about Cyberpunk. I think that might have been Darth Raver, who was in the chat earlier tonight. Shout out to you if you're there. But basically now, we've been in communication with the Mad Queen, and also now with Last Known Meal and Neon Arcade. And, a lot of you, so many of you have expressed appreciation that we are all working together and trying to build a positive community. And I'm so happy that we've been able to do that. And so definitely, check out all those other channels.
Now, there's been there's another super chat if you can give that a read. But despite the fact that there have been some people who've been trying to take that down, like it's surprising how we reached out to a lot of people and said, hey, we're creating this multi-channel community. Nobody's hogging the spotlight. We're all going to share it on a regular schedule, irregardless of what kind of news comes up. So we basically just flipped a coin, and we started with somebody, and we've invited a lot of other YouTubers on, other people on, and it's funny how some very small reactions from some people are quite negative, and then other people it's like we just declared war on them somehow. It's like, wow, that didn't escalate at all. Like, good lord.
Hate is gonna hate, as my girl Avril
that.
Lavigne would say. That's not even close.
Well,
to
can I
correct.
unveil guest of the podcast?
Yes,
Yeah,
I was just going to
to.
say we have a special guest coming this Sunday, do we not?
Yes, we do have a special guest. We have the ambassador of our Talsorian Games that is going to talk about Cyberpunk Red, and he's going to talk about the pod that he can talk about what are the plans of Talsorian at the Gen Con. That's when they're going to release Cyberpunk Red, and we're going to discuss the parts of the game that he can discuss, which aren't a lot, yes.
Right.
Not a lot yet. We have more stuff coming after the E3. There's going to be lots of great interviews. But yes, we have been speaking with our Telsorian. That's Mike Pondsmith's company, and we've been speaking with people here and there and everywhere, all over the place. And we're going to have some really great guests. And again, the schedule we don't really know the schedule for who's hosting what. It's a communal thing, and the community is the number one goal. So. 100%. Can you read that thing now?
Yeah, okay. Brotech with the super chat. When Cyberpunk 2077 comes out and it's really good, this article will come back like a boomerang to Jason, and he will be immortalized in a hell of an Anthem Cyberpunk meme. I can't wait for that.
I cannot wait for that, and just desserts, my friend, just desserts. And thank you again. Thank you for the support. We try to cover news fairly and on board, and we are, we're as honest as we can be. I've talked about how we get a lot of hints, we get a lot of this, we get a lot of that. We don't guarantee and confirm anything until we can confirm it. We need at least multiple sources that are not connected to each other. We need independent sources to come together and say this or this or this, or have something on the record from somebody that we can back up. Before we mouth off. We could talk about a lot of things that we're not supposed to talk about, but we also choose to not talk about some things because it just wouldn't be positive hype, and most people would go over their heads, a little too much from time to time, and as Ash can attest, I don't let anything go over my head because I have way too fast reflexes. I would catch it. That is a joke.
I was going to say, I still remember that time when I outshot you at an arcade.
Yeah.
All right. And I like to rub that in because he used to wipe the floor with me at Halo, so I've got to gloat in those little victories that I've managed to obtain. All right. I think that we should probably call it there.
We very quickly we'll just cover. So THQ Nordic has been snatching up studios for studios that have been involved directly with making big open world games. These guys are rising. It's very small. It's going under the radar for a lot of people. Just really want to cover this quickly. THQ Nordic has a massive open world game coming, and they are snatching up as many skills and as much people as they can to make this thing work and to make it really good. So I'm gonna talk about that. Just throw that out there for the discussion. They snatched up Pariah Bytes, and this is a good thing. I think we're going to see some pretty cool stuff from them down the road. This is probably going to be a few years down the road, so it's just like this is the kind of stuff that we've got our ear to the ground listening for ahead of time. So we're hopefully going to be talking about a great game coming from them hopefully down the road, and hopefully they avoid the whole microtransaction thing. But it was an interesting story that was kind of not really seen in too many places, so I wanted to just kind of briefly mention it because it's really good to see more and more of these big open world games getting more and more bigger and bigger teams working on it. So and yes, THQ also bought out yet another studio just recently, Gothic Ryzen, the people who made that one. So
that is Piranha Bytes.
Sorry. You're right there. They bought out. I can't remember. They bought out another one though. But absolutely, like I said, they've been snatching up stuff for a while now, looking for great skills. So this is really cool. I'm excited to see where this goes.
All right, excellent.
So, anyways, yeah.
I encourage you to check out the video I put out today, a bit of an expose on the rollout plan for Rage 2. They basically have a live service rollout plan for this single-player game.
It caused you much rage.
I see what you did there. You did there. So you're used to Cyber ranting. You want to hear me ranting a little bit? You can check out that video. But basically, if you're eyeing up that game, don't buy it yet. Wait until it's on sale, or they include all of the DLC as one package, because they released a game that had very little content in terms of what we're used to from big open world games, especially from Bethesda. It had very little content, but within the next 6 months, there's going to be 2 paid DLC packs with story content. And so it's really looking like they just chopped out a bunch of story content so they could sell it later. I don't know 100% whether that was the case or if they just planned it in advance to be like that, but really, I think it's garbage. So check that out. It's a shame because it's a fun game, and I do recommend picking it up if they fix this situation. But other than that, we'll just leave it there. So anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for supporting this show, for the great conversation in the chat. Thank you for all the super chats tonight. We really, really appreciate that. Thank you to our Patreon supporters, Shannon Vega, Old Man Manson, and our 2 anonymous supporters, our channel member, Captain Dammit. Haven't seen you in the live chat for a while, but definitely say hi next time you're listening. And all of you, one of the best things you can do for us is to slam that like button and sub, and also share this content around if you appreciate it. That helps to grow the channel, and that's ultimately, how we spread and grow. So we really appreciate all of you doing that. Please take a moment, if you haven't already, to slam that like button before you close that tab or close your app or go on to the next video. Definitely take a moment to do that. We really appreciate it. If you're listening after the fact on SoundCloud, we want to thank you for your follows and likes on iTunes or on Spotify, for subscriptions and reviews. And feel free to join us on Saturday morning at... that's not the right time. Anyway, join us Saturday morning North America time or Saturday afternoon Europe time for the live show where you can interact with us and other listeners and be a part of the discussion. The Augmented Reality Podcast is a presentation of the Triple S League. Check out our YouTube channel for game guides, reviews, comedy, news updates, and tons more quality gaming content. My name is Ash Unity. Oh, and thank you so much for being here, Mad Queen. It was great having you again. On behalf of Subsidian...
Thanks for having me.
And the Mad Queen, thank you all for listening. And we will talk to you on the weekend.